Well, good morning, everybody.
Good morning. How you doing, Tristan?
Speaking Not Stirred, episode 10,
Yep.
almost halfway.
Yeah,
I'm
that's right.
fantastic, Spencer, and yourself?
I'm good. I'm
Good.
good. We
What do you watch?
what was that? Not really, but it's from that brand.
Oh, the same one that you showed me?
Yeah,
Okay. Yeah, you
buy
said
one
that to
get
me
one
as
free.
well. That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, no, we had a good weekend last weekend. Did a big swim. We talked a little bit about it last week. Might have
The
been two
week
weeks ago
prior, yeah.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 2 weeks ago, and the swim for SOF, which was awesome. Almost
Yeah.
3.5 miles from Coronado to
What a blast.
uh, yeah, the USS Midway. A lot of retired special operations veterans and
Yep.
Olympians.
Mm-hmm.
Just an amazing group of people out there. There's over. I think there was a little over 100 swimmers,
I
or
think it was,
just
right around 100.
under.
Yeah,
Yeah.
give or
No.
take.
Yeah. Amazing event. And you and I kind of jumped into it. I mean, I've never done a swim that long before, and we maybe had a
I
week
don't
and
think
a
I've ever been
half.
in a pool for longer than an hour, at least in the
Yeah.
last, like 10 years.
Yeah. So it was a big jump, but we both did great. It was awesome. I just think that when you get a chance to do something like that, and we're both like connected to the special operations like community, so
Yeah.
you know, what's so funny?
I'm just laughing at how brutal it was for me, man.
Yeah. Well, tell them, tell the people. They
All
want to
right,
know.
so um, obviously Spencer was there. He knows how what went down. But
Yeah.
so you do one leg, and it's you hop in the water. You do a mile swim. You get out after the first mile. You do what was it, 100 push-ups and 22 pull-ups,
Hmm.
and you're back in the water for 2.5 miles, and then back out again for another 100 push-ups, 22 pull-ups.
Yeah.
Um, Spencer and I were up pretty early. What, 5:20 or
Yeah.
so?
It was
Yeah,
early.
around there, 5 o'clock. Let's just say 5 o'clock. And I smacked down two bananas, a bowl of yogurt, and a protein shake, just to get enough fuel to last me through the race, and then we go grab at lunch or whatever. Um, After the first mile, I get out of the water and I felt horrible. Did I look bad when I was on that little island?
No. No.
No, because
Mm-mm.
I felt bent out of shape when I was there, dude. I was like, I don't know how. I'm doing my push-ups and I'm like, I'm gonna hurl in front of everybody.
Like you
And
felt nauseous or what?
oh yeah, remember you kept asking me, "Hey, you want some honey? Hey, you want some
Yeah.
nose?
Yeah.
Hey,
Yeah.
you want some?" And I'm like, Spencer, no, I don't fucking want it.
Oh, it's so funny.
And I think I told you straight up, I was like, dude, if I have one of those, I'm gonna throw it up.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I'll be fine. It's just, I've never worked out this type of workout, so I think my body was just kind of in shock with like, what
Yeah.
the hell are you putting me through? And so I was like, we'll be good. It's all good. Get back in the water after push-ups and pull-ups. We get back in the water for 2.5 mile swim. I'm maybe a quarter of a mile in, like right as we wrapped. You know what? It was right after we went under the bridge. No, no, the
No,
bridge
because
was.
that was first leg.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it was right after we wrapped around um, that corner of the island,
Hmm.
and on the left-hand side there was like those big apartment buildings with like the red
Yeah.
tile rooftops.
I'm on my phone. I'm gonna try and find, if I can, the picture of the race, like kind of
Okay.
what it looks like from an aerial view. So keep
Yeah,
going.
yeah, yeah. You should. So I get to that point, and I'm like, just to give slight background, when I was a kid, I had extremely bad gastric reflex. And so whenever my mom would feed me, I would just throw it right back up. And I've always had a problem with whenever I throw up, it's extremely violent, right?
So let me here pause for
Yeah.
a second. Let me try and see if this shows up. I don't know if it
Okay.
will.
Yeah. So, yeah, I can see it fine.
All right. So
So you'll see where it says start in the bottom left.
Yeah,
We
so like
jogged over to
right
the second
here.
point. Yep. We jogged over to the second point. That's the first leg. So you get in the water there. So go ahead and move your finger up,
Yeah,
Spencer.
and then we
So
swam.
your 1 mile takes you here.
Yeah, so like right to the other side of this bridge. So you
Yep.
go under the bridge, right to the left.
So that's where I first got out and felt like horrible. Oh yeah,
Yep.
that looks better because you can see the lines. So then you get back out at Tidelands Bay,
Yeah,
I think is
right
what it's
there,
called. And then you swim across, up and around,
over there.
and then you dart across the bay to the USS Midway, and that's where we finished.
Yep.
But where I was going was I have a sixth sense with the amount of times I've thrown up in my life that I know
Oh,
when it's coming, and it came. So I flipped on my back like a sea otter, but I let my legs sink down a little bit so I wasn't like flat on the water. And I was kind of still treading water, kicking, and I made sure no one was behind me a good distance, and I just let it rip, man. It was,
oh,
I'm telling you, I've never experienced that where I'm like, okay, I am literally puking everything out
oh.
while treading water, and I still have 1.8 miles to swim.
That's a long swim.
That is a long freaking swim. And so this patrol boat, one of the sheriff's boats, was right next to me when it happened, and he pulled the boat in front of me so that I couldn't keep swimming. So I'm stopped treading water, and he's like, "Hey, do we need to pull you out?" And I was like, "No, I'm good. What are you talking about?" And he says, well, "You're just throwing up. What do you mean you're good?" And I was like, "I just had to let it out. We're fine." So he's like, "All right," and he backs the boat up and lets me continue. And I felt that was probably the best I felt all day since we hit the water.
Mm-hmm.
Once I got it out, I was like, okay, I feel
Yeah.
good. So I just put my head down, got my rhythm back, started getting after it. And what was happening was I think my breathing was off from the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just sucking in salt water
Yeah.
for, an hour.
And that'll make you sick too. All
Oh,
that salt
yeah,
water,
for
like it'll
sure.
totally make you sick.
And the bobbing and weaving, not
Yeah.
being used to that. So then, like I said, I started getting after it, felt good. And I kept getting off course. I don't know if it was from the current or what, but like I'd look up and I'm like, okay, I'm 45 degrees to the right. I need to be going
Mm-hmm.
freaking straight here, right? So I corrected myself, and so then I got almost subconscious about it, and I kept looking up, looking up. Like I
Mm-hmm.
take 2 strokes, look up, 2 strokes, look up, 2 strokes, look up. What was happening when I was looking up was I was inhaling, like getting my breath when I would pop my head up forward. And you know how it was pretty choppy out there and a
Mm-hmm.
little windy. So it was just like I would go in to inhale and just a little wave would just smack right
Yeah.
in my mouth and I'm like
Yeah.
like coughing out all this salt water. So then I felt my stomach starting to get sick again and I'm like,
Ugh.
okay, I'm filling back up with salt water. And finally, again, I'm like, oh, it's here. So I freaking flip on my back, start puking again. And at that point, after that time, there was nothing left in my body to throw up.
Yeah.
So then later on, as I filled up with salt water again, I started just dry heaving. Nothing was coming out. And
That's what
like,
I was laughing so hard about. Not that I saw you, but I could just see this guy swimming on his back, just nothing, just dry heaving.
horrible feeling, dude, because you're trying, because when you dry heave, like you suck in a lot of air because you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I'm trying not to get the water in,
Wait, what is it? How do you do it again?
I'm not doing it again.
Yeah. So
uh,
funny.
so then finally, dude, we get to the end and I climb out. Did you watch I watched a video of me and I look like I'm in shock.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get out of the water and I climb up the ladder and I'm just like discombobulated. I look at like I have no idea where I'm at.
So funny.
And someone went and they found my bag and handed me my bag and I go and set my bag down. And I don't know if you noticed, but I disappeared from you guys because I went to the other side of the cars off the side and
Oh, you
started
did?
I started dry heaving again.
I did not know that.
I thought I was gonna throw up, and like this uh elder Asian family that's like walking by, and they're like, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm like,
Yeah,
"I'm fine. I'm fine. Just please leave me."
it's so funny.
Oh, dude, it was
Yeah, but they said a lot of people when they got out of the water looked like they were just kind of weird because I mean being in the water for that long, and
yeah,
granted, a lot of those guys are used to it, right?
right.
Like,
Well, some of them have been swimming for 30 years. You know what I
oh
mean?
yeah, but like Robert said, like longest swim he's ever done was like probably a little over 10 miles, and it's pitch black in the
That's
ocean, so you
insane.
can't see anything. So you're out there for 3-4 hours.
Yeah,
But to most other people, that's a really long swim, and but to be in the water, where you're not, I mean, you're just basically relying on buoyancy and
yeah,
constant movement.
hmm
It's definitely a curveball for your system.
yeah.
And again, like we literally jumped into this like a week and a half, two
I was
weeks.
gonna say a week and a half to 2 weeks before. That's
Yeah, like
I
that's
don't
it.
care
I
how many
mean,
times you could swim twice a day for 2 weeks. That's not gonna really
yeah, you're not gonna make.
performance wise. It's not gonna get you anywhere. Like mentally, it'll get you more
Yeah,
comfortable in the water, maybe. But yeah,
right. Yeah. So, but anyways, I mean, it was awesome. But no, so like, there's a video because you're doing your normal stroke like swimming, and I practiced like the first 2 weeks, kind of switching between that and just kind of kicking on my back to give my
hmm
upper body a break, and then like what we would call a combat side stroke.
yeah,
So like I didn't need to do either of those, and then I got to a point where I was like, okay, well I'm gonna do the side stroke, and you think I have like a froggy leg type movement,
yeah.
and I did that, and my left hamstring just went boom, and I felt it right away, and I was like, nope, can't do that. So I just did normal stroke the whole time, and I was trying to avoid cramping. And there's a video of me getting out. They've got this big rollout, like floaty thing that you climb onto, and then onto the deck, and then up the ladder. And there's a video. I don't know if you saw it, but like I get out on this floaty thing. I go down to reach for my fins and take them off, and you can see my calf muscle just go up to the top of
Mm,
my top end of my calf, like cramp, and I'm going like this, flexing my foot. But I
yeah.
mean, my whole body, my whole lower body was like on the verge of cramping when I got out. Like I could totally feel it. And I'm
Jeez.
going up that ladder, and I'm like, oh God, don't cramp right here. I'm gonna fall. But it was awesome. I think to wrap it up, the best part about it was the environment. The
Yeah.
environment at events like that, because everybody's there for the exact same purpose, and it just happens to be something that our group of friends, which is like four people, is super passionate about. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it was incredible. I mean, I won't even question not doing that next year, and
Oh,
I want to do New York too. I think New York would be awesome.
for sure it would be.
So yeah, that is the swim that we
Yeah, I
did.
couldn't imagine doing it in New York, especially because like you're swimming up to the Statue of Liberty. You're
Oh
swimming. You
man.
got the big buildings around you. That'd be
Yeah.
so cool.
Yeah, and I mean, our buddy, I mean, they do Wall Street, they do the whole thing. I mean, they go
hmm
on the full tour,
Yeah.
and we've got a former teammate out there who's working on Wall Street at UBS.
Yeah.
So it would be awesome.
Is that
But
where Matt is?
yeah,
I didn't know that.
on Wall Street at
That's
UBS.
awesome.
Yeah.
I know. I need to
So
catch up with him.
yeah, he was such a great dude.
I'll
So
tell you what, everybody. I just thought of this. I'm gonna make an X account for the pod,
yeah,
and
absolutely,
we'll post some pictures and videos and whatnot of like
great
some of the
idea.
things we do on there. So
Yeah,
um, I'll post some stuff from the race that the moms and girlfriends and whatnot sent over. So
yeah, yeah. And then we will, because not everybody has Twitter, but like we can include a link because if you have a
Mhm.
link, you can view it. So
yeah, yeah,
cool,
we'll throw it in
good idea. So today to totally change course here, I think we wanted to talk about kind of the two different paths that we're on.
there.
In many ways, I think in many ways it's similar, but in very obvious ways it would be different.
Hmm.
And just like anything, there are pros and cons to either
Both
one.
sides. Yeah.
Um, and really, what we mean by that is going to work for a company. In your case, a great company. So I think it's different than what a lot of people kind of normally do is just to get a job.
Yeah.
You've actually not been pretty strategic. I mean, I'd say you're highly strategic about it because of where you first went. So
Hmm.
actually, we've talked a little bit about this before, but maybe we can each give like kind of a 30-second recap of, we graduate, then what? So I'll
Yeah.
let you go first. So kind of how you
Okay.
got to what you're doing today.
So we graduated what, May or April of 21.
Yeah.
Right away, I got a job that I'm not even going to go into because it was 4 months of working there, and it was not very good. Very small business. Um,
Wait, which business?
that was the telecom company that I worked for. Remember?
Oh, that's right. I do
Where I
remember
was
that.
traveling around the states. It was
Yeah, I
cool
do.
because I got to travel, but it wasn't for me.
No.
Um, so what we ended up doing was, while I was out working for that company, we were doing a project in Tennessee, and I told my buddy, who has also now left that company, and he does car detailing, so he comes out and details our cars and everything. And I was like, "Hey, can you cover for me? I have an interview with Tesla this afternoon." He's
Hmm.
like, "Yeah, I got you." So I went and snuck into like a little office at this big, huge healthcare facility that we were doing some work at, and 15-minute interview, hopped on, chopped it up with her name's Sarah. She's the GM now, but manager at one of the locations out here in Orange County. And I got a call the next day that I got the job. So I went and worked for Tesla. For one, obviously, a company like that isn't going anywhere. For two, it's a huge name to have on your resume. And for three, you've heard us talk about him. We're big fans of Elon, and
Yeah.
what he has done and what he's going to do. You guy's a stud.
When you say not going anywhere, you're talking about the first company.
What's up?
When you said, not going anywhere, like the company's not going anywhere,
No,
you're
no, no.
talking about the
I
first.
meant like, um, the first company I was with. If they make a bad mistake, the company's diluted, done,
Right.
screwed. Right? With joining Tesla, they're not going anywhere. I
Right.
can go
Of
hop in
course.
that company, and
That's
I'm
okay.
not
Got it.
worried about the company not making money and not being able to pay me. That's
Got it.
more what I meant, but I see where you're going with that.
Sure.
So I was like, okay, let's go give Tesla a shot. They gave me the job. I started October 3rd of 2021,
Hmm.
and worked a few different roles within the company, kind of bounced around a little bit, and I came across a role in Costa Mesa where I was helping manage the service center there. So I came across a lot of people every single day.
Hmm.
And I think I calculated it out, and I told you, like, I was having at least a 5-minute conversation with a few thousand people within a
Yeah.
year, um, which is huge if you take advantage of it, right? Especially this area. This is one of the richest areas in the world.
Hmm.
And I just took advantage of, meeting people, tested my skills, and from there I was offered an opportunity to go and work in development. So that's what I want to end up doing. One of the things I want to end up doing, I'd say probably one of my
Hmm.
main goals. Um, and so, I didn't want to leave Tesla. I love Tesla, but
Yeah.
I also had to realize, okay, this is an opportunity that people aren't given this. You know what I mean? So
Hmm.
once it dropped in my lap, I was like, I can't not take it.
Yeah.
So now I work for a developer. We do mainly public building, but regardless, building is building. It's all the same.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. So, yeah, that's what you're doing now, real estate development. And
I know we said 30 seconds, so it was like 2 minutes, but
no, that's fine. So for me, you know, the tail end of our college years at the University of Redlands was really weird because that was the introduction of COVID. So,
yep.
the yeah, I mean, the tail end of it was just kind of weird. Like everything was moved to going online. a
Mm-hmm.
lot of professors, in my opinion, were very unorganized. So it seemed that the
Extremely.
demand for school uh, decreased, not demand for school, but the demand like within each class decreased a lot, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Like it was, I mean, it felt super relaxed. It honestly, it didn't feel like a great ending. Like, sure, it was nice because it just didn't feel like you needed to do as much,
So I'm gonna
you
be
know?
honest, we didn't do anything.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, yeah, it was kind of pathetic
Yeah.
how it ended up. But um, the other side of that is it opened up. I don't know, maybe it opened up. At least for me, it was like, oh, well, this is kind of an opportunity because I don't like just like kind of sitting still and screwing around, especially when you're in your last year.
Mm-hmm.
So it was like, okay, well, maybe this is the time to start to
Start working
pursue
on something else.
pursue something. So like as we've talked about in the past, we were both athletes, and then the reason why I quit, or at least one of the big reasons why, is like I just didn't I just didn't feel like I was supposed to be playing football anymore, and I
Mm-hmm.
wanted to get into, like, frankly, I wanted to go make money, like business, not just for money, but like business. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've loved it since I was a kid, and I wanted to like try it out for the first time in real time.
Yeah.
And
Did you ever
for
start
me,
a business when you were a kid? Like, walking door to door doing chocolate covered
yeah,
strawberries or car washes, anything like that?
yeah, no, I did stuff like that a lot because it was really cool, and I think
Hmm.
it had a major, I mean, huge impact on me. Was that a lot of my mom's clients in particular, and she's in residential real estate, were like high end. So
Okay.
like that's like kind of where her focus has been.
Hmm.
So from like I sold my first car, I think at like 12 years old. It was an Aston Martin DB9. It was
No.
gray, and I have a handwritten letter from the GM of one of the largest Aston dealerships.
That's when it first
Highest,
came out, right? Like this would have been 2009, 2010.
yeah, it was a while ago. One of the highest grossing Aston dealerships and the highest grossing Bentley dealership in the country.
That's
And
awesome.
she had a client, and he was, just to tell this little story quick, but she had a client who was a big car guy, and he was an older gentleman, and he had a really bad back,
Hmm.
really bad. But he wanted a Ferrari, and I remember specifically, and they loved me. They were like grandparents to me. And
Yeah.
he called my mom. He was like, "Hey, I'm looking at this car right now, this Ferrari. Have Spencer come over." And I was like this little kid because I loved cars.
Yeah.
So I came over there and I'm looking at it, and I remember it specifically. It was an all black Ferrari California,
Hmm.
and we were talking, and I remember I said I don't even know how I really thought about this. I probably heard it from somebody else, but I was like, you know, you have a really bad back, Glenn. His name was Glenn, and I was like, but the week prior to that, because I love going to look at cars here. It used to be called Desert European. It's a
Uh-huh.
huge exotic car dealership, and I used to know the owner really well. And there was this brand new on the center of the showroom, this DB9, and it was gray, just like the Aston Martin DBS from James Bond.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, great car. And historically, Aston Martins are like more comfortable
Right.
than a Ferrari or a
Yeah.
Lamborghini. And I told him that. I was like,
They're
you should probably go.
a good balance between sport and classy.
Yeah, and that's why I love them, because you can, if you want to drive it every day, you can.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I told him, I said, I think you should look at that before you buy that Ferrari. Well, turns out he goes and looks at it and he buys it. And he tells
Yeah.
the GM, he goes, I wouldn't have known about the car. I probably wouldn't even have the thought about, an
Unless
Aston
Spencer
Martin
told me.
unless he told me. So the GM, I have the letter. He wrote me a letter, and it's this really cool. It's
That
this
is so
really really
awesome.
cool letter. So to answer your question, yeah, like things like that. Not so much like the typical lemonade stand.
Hmm.
I always grew up in like these older country clubs, so
Yeah,
it's like not a lot of older people are buying lemonade. But
for sure.
anyways,
Sorry to
so
get you off track. I just was
yeah, no,
curious.
it's fine.
But go ahead.
So both parents being in real estate, and a lot of those clients, a lot of people who have made a lot of money are in real estate directly or indirectly. So that's kind of what I really wanted to do, and I quit football because I had gotten my real estate license
Hmm.
the end of freshman year, or no, the middle of freshman year, so in December of college. And number one, on summers I could work with my parents and help them out in terms of residential real estate, and make
Yeah.
some money. So I did that. But then it really transitioned, and I'll say the name, but Grant Cardone, like I kind of discovered him,
Hmm.
and I was like, oh my God, how cool would that be to be able to, you know, in my lifetime build a huge portfolio of these big properties like he has. And I know people in personal life who have actually like done that. So like I've seen them, I've
Hmm.
seen what the kind of houses they buy, and it was like that was really cool to me. So when I stopped playing football, I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do. I don't really know, quite know how to start, but I've got some family that, like a second uncle of mine is the head of a huge commercial real estate company, Kidder Matthews.
Okay.
His two sons took over his portfolio of business that he built over 30 years, and they were making bank. And
Yeah.
I thought that that's just the commercial real estate space, not really thinking that, well, it took over their dad's portfolio. Not to take anything
Hmm.
away from them, because they've taken it and ran with it, but that's not really what would happen to me. So what I started doing is I'd just drive around the desert, and I'd like go find multifamily properties, and I'd send them to like a couple of her clients that I knew really well, because I
Yeah.
knew that they were in the buying mode. So anyways, fast forward, like that wasn't really what I wanted to do. Like it just didn't wasn't I don't know, wasn't pulling on me, I guess.
Yeah.
And COVID obviously had started, and my grandfather, who I've talked about, was in the healthcare business a long, long time ago.
Hmm.
And I always like asking him questions about it. And I never thought, oh man, maybe I should go into the healthcare space. But one of my other mentors, who's been buying, companies at a very large scale, though, and rolling up companies. A roll up is where you buy a series of companies within the same industry so that you can consolidate, all the back office operations. And if you can buy small companies for 3 to 5 times, their annual earnings, well, 5 years later, when you have 25 of them, you can probably sell the whole thing for 10 to 15 times. Like that's just kind of the arbitrage thing. And that caught my eye like nothing ever has. I was like, oh my gosh, how freaking cool. Number one, it's really, really intense. And I really like that environment. Like I think I would be very bored and distracted if I didn't have that. And I'd probably try and dabble in like multiple different things at once. And I believe that you focus on the few, not the many, and you
Yeah.
give the fewer amount of things your all. So, you know, again, fast forward, it was like a culmination of COVID, mentors kind of providing like this blueprint, like very intimate mentoring, like steps, basically. And that's kind of how it's been. I
Like,
mean,
here's what I did. This is how you can do it, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I am today, and I've throughout this process, and I'm not going to talk about this again, but it's a big process. It's not like medical equipment sales.
Hmm.
You're basically asking people to sign their, you're kind of
Or
you basically are their retirement plan,
yeah.
for not just them, but most likely like a couple generations. So it's a really big process, and we'll get into this considering the topic, but at my age and level of inexperience, which we can also address, but
Hmm.
you know, um, it's hard. But I never thought it would be easy,
Yeah.
but it just is. It's certainly not the quick success
Yeah.
type of thing. It's a big building process. So, but I'm in for the long ride, and I've obviously come to terms with that.
For
So
sure.
that's kind of where both of us are, and I guess the direction we wanted to go with the conversation is basically what are the pros and cons of each,
Yeah.
because
Go ahead.
there's a younger kid that like I help mentor, and he wants to do what I'm doing, but he's going to go to college, and he's you know ridiculously bright. He's got like a 4.3 GPA. He's
Sweet.
Stanford, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Wharton. Well, Wharton
Yeah.
would be an MBA, but business school. But those are kind of the schools, and that's what he wants to do when he graduates. So
Hmm.
similar to like what I'm doing, and so that's kind of where we're going to take the conversation. So
Yeah. I would say, like, to explain to everyone on a very basic level, pretty much the difference between where we're at now. I know we both eventually, we've talked about this before, want to own, extremely large companies, have, lots of employees, help people out, XYZ. There's a lot to it, right? Um, we're just taking two different paths to get there. And on your behalf, it's like, okay, I'm gonna straight up do it from scratch.
Hmm.
I'm gonna put together X, Y, and Z, and I'm gonna figure it out as I go. On my side of things, it's like, okay, I'm trying to learn on someone else's dime,
Hmm.
right? So at least I have like a steady stream of income, and quite frankly, and I told the guys this when I got offered my job, I don't really care how much I get paid. I care
Hmm.
if I learn and I need to make rent. That's it.
Hmm.
Um, so it is, two fairly different and two that have, extremely different values and pros and cons and how to learn and how much you learn from it.
Hmm.
So I'm trying to think how we should exactly unpack this.
So here's what I would say for myself. So the reason why I brought up this kid that I like help mentor, and he's become a dear friend of mine, but he's, I mean, he's 18 years old, like he's very young,
Okay. Yeah.
and in the process of me helping mentor him, we have talked about the importance of mentors, and not just kind of your nothing that is wrong with this, but not like, oh, he was my business school professor. I'm talking about high profile individuals, like
Yeah.
big people, like the head of your company. You're at your company because of the guy who started the company, right?
Yeah.
I
Hmm.
mean, like he's the one who brought you there, and over time, I'm sure that relationship would develop into a strong like mentor type relationship.
Yeah.
But this kid is like interfacing with multi-billionaires
Okay.
because I've showed him that, like, yes, you can talk to these people. Like, Ross Perot, the name?
Hmm. Yeah.
So his son, Ross Perot Jr., who is a multi-billionaire,
Yeah.
it, that's his mentor. Like,
Wow.
that's what I'm talking about. I mean, big time people.
That's insane.
And yeah, and there's like this really popular wave right now of what they would call ETA, and it's entrepreneurship through acquisition. I had no idea what this was until like 3 months ago. And essentially, what this is a lot of MBAs. So you go to Wharton, Harvard. They now teach this program called ETA, and
Hmm.
it's called a search fund. And
Okay.
this was very new to me, and it sounds exactly like what I'm doing, but there are differences. And basically, he asked me. He was like, "Don't you think?" And he's young. He goes, "Don't you think that people are like." Because he kind of thinks at his level of inexperience, having not done it, he's kind of sunshine and rainbows. He's like, I mean, I just don't understand why people would not do this and blah, 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 and why they
Hmm.
think they need the experience, because we build the team around us to do the bulk of the work so that, not only do you have, it's not like you went and hired your friend who you
Right.
did a finance class with to do the financial analysis. No, you're getting in my case, a 20-year CEO, or CFO of one of the largest health systems in the country.
Right.
And he goes, but so anybody can do it. And it's like, I think they could. Um, but if you take the route of like my cousin, for example, who he wants to do something entrepreneurial down the road, but what he's doing, and this is very, very common for this ETA search fund type thing, is go get your MBA, and or go work in investment banking for
Mm.
2 3 years, or be a private equity associate for 2 3 years. And then what you do is you go out and you start this search fund thing, and you buy a company, and you're 25, 26, 27. Some of these guys are in their late 30s,
Yeah.
and you buy one company. And because of this experience that you've got now, you grow that one company for 5 7 10 years. I'd say probably closer to 7 to 10.
Yeah.
And you'll have an exit, and you'll make, you know 30, 50, 60 million bucks. And
Mhm.
that's awesome. And he goes, but like, why would people do that? Because our model is very different. And I said, listen, man, like, I if I didn't have, and this is a real answer, like if I did not have like a relationship with God, like if I wasn't like a faith-based guy, and I didn't feel that like God has literally intervened in my life, then my answer would be very different. Um, but to take that route, that's a phenomenal way to go.
Hmm.
I mean, it's phenomenal. You go into one of those jobs, you're going to make, as a first year, you're going to make over six figures.
Yeah.
As a second year, you're probably going to make 120 ish, depending on where you're at. I mean, there's guys at I'm forgetting the name, but it's the largest like hedge fund. They are paying. This is not a joke. They are paying their interns $250,000 for an internship, and they live in the Four Seasons in Miami.
Oh my.
I'm not kidding. I think it's Apollo. No, it's not Apollo. Ken something. He's the head of it. He was the highest paid guy in the world. I mean, it's outrageous. How could you go wrong? You know, you can't. And one is not right and one is not wrong, in my opinion. But I, just like what happened to football, and that's kind of my evidence, is like it happened in less than 12 hours. Like, I knew that chapter of my life, being football, was like over.
Yeah.
And I know I'm in really, really good hands here with the people that I've built around me. But the alternative is I could have gotten a job, and I could do that, and I could make great money. Like, I could probably make. There's an oil and gas company that I know of. I know the owner of it. It's a $600-700 million company. He owns 100% of it.
Yeah, I mean, with your one discipline and your two, like, strength and knowledge, you could easily go make six figures somewhere, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think it matters what industry you go to. Any industry, even if you just went and did car sales at Aston Martin or something, you would kill it. That's just how you are. But I think you're focused more on, like, okay, if I put more into this now, what am I going to get out of it later, right? That's where the money comes to mind. Like, the carrot, it's almost like the carrot of the stick. They're waving 120K in front of your face, and you're like, no, I'm good. I'm going to focus on what I want to do.
Yeah, and it's like one part of me can say that, it's like, it's tempting, but it's kind of like when a dog tastes blood. A lot of times they put the dog down because it's tasted it, and it's very unpredictable now because they want more. Well, like, I've tasted the blood of, like, what this feels like in real time. And I mean, there is no part of my human body and mind that says, I could see myself doing something else. And, like, that is God's truth. Like, I cannot comprehend it. And that's how I know, like, I know I'm in the right space. And you know what else is, this guy said to me a couple days ago, he goes, most of the time when people quit, you think about, there's like 10 walls, right? 10 brick walls. And entrepreneurship is, you got to break through the wall. Like, you just got to keep doing it. And it hurts. And then you get to the next one. And that one hurts even more. And you keep going. And they get to the 10th wall, and it just isn't, like, falling down. And it's like, what is happening here? But on the other side of the 10th wall, and step back, you start on wall one. On the other side of it, you think that's your starting point. Like, that is the opportunity that you're working for. You do all this work, it hurts, and then it's not there. Okay, I'll move on to number two. Well, 9 of them later, you're at the 10th wall. And you break it down, and you're trying to break it down, and it isn't breaking. Each wall gets harder. And then they quit because it just hurts so bad. Most of the time, that's where the opportunity was. And, it's you got to stick around long enough for the good things to happen. But again, like, I'm not saying that what I'm doing is, the right path or the best path. And I'm not saying that the alternative is the right, best, wrong, or worst path. But I do know, for me as an individual, this is the right path and the best path. And, I'll go to war with that statement. Like, I just will. I've had to defend it multiple times. But it's right for me. And one of he's probably my favorite, this sounds weird, my favorite billionaire out there to listen to and, like, really study is Tillman Fertitta. I don't know if you know who that is, but
I've heard the name. Yeah.
So Tillman Fertitta, in my opinion, he quite literally is one of the greatest entrepreneurs in the world because of his story. And what he's created is he owns 100% of his company.
Can you see this on the screen here?
Yep.
Okay, I was just going to show people. This is kind of a representation of what you're talking about. I've seen this
Yeah,
before. But you got this guy on the bottom who's like dug all this way, right? He's
right.
2 hits from getting to the diamonds, and he's given up. He's walking away, head
Yeah.
down, and this guy's just hungry, and he's probably got a few more feet to go.
Yeah,
So
no, I mean it's super accurate, and it's very accurate. But like if you think about that picture, the key to that is having really good counsel who will be super honest with you,
hmm
because there are some times when you should pivot. And I'd be
yeah,
a liar if I said. I had one of my mentors ask me straight up. He goes, "I'm going to ask you very bluntly. Do you ever think that you should pivot?" And I said, I was like, no,
when you
I
say
don't.
pivot, do you mean like is that an industry jump or like just a different
Well,
focus
that's
on what
so
you're
that's
doing?
the thing is like, do you ever think you should go pivot? And you got your real estate license. Do you ever think you should go do that?
Mm,
I can't even comprehend that. What I have thought of is pivot in terms of industry.
yeah.
I have. And we don't need to get into the dynamics of the industry and maybe why that would be a good or a bad idea.
hmm
My conclusion is the same every time, which is I'm in the right spot.
Yeah.
But I'm working on, something else right now. So, all in all, I brought up Tillman Fertitta, and he
Yeah.
goes, people ask me all the time, should I get my MBA? And he said, my answer is always the same. He goes, you will know if you need your MBA.
hmm
You will know. Like if you don't have kind of the internal inherent like, business knowledge to be confident in that setting,
hmm
you should probably get it because you're going to get valuable things. Is it going to make you super successful? It can,
hmm
but that's not going to be the deciding factor. But do you know how many MBAs are out there? Like, you know, so, but you will know,
Yeah.
and I know, you
hmm
know. So that's what I would say.
What do you feel like is the the big con to the route that you're going? Is it, not having a set salary or, base pay or anything like that
Yeah.
right now? Like, do you
Let
think
me shut
that's
my door. I've got a big dog, and she can open the doors. One
okay?
second.
This episode is brought to you by Jocko. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah, I wish.
I
Maybe
know,
we'll
right?
get there one day. We'll have to talk to
One
him.
day.
But the cons of it are the following. Um, no secret here. I have a girlfriend who I've been with for like 9 years. Granted, and they were like, "Well, why aren't you married yet?" I mean, we started dating when we were 13, so
Yeah.
that's kind of why. Um, and like again, no secret. She's definitely the one. Can't can't argue it. I know that for a fact. It's a lot to
hmm
have, whether it's a spouse or a girlfriend or a boyfriend, depending on who you are, and have them like be on that path of entrepreneurship and want to invest emotionally there. Like
hmm
it's very difficult. And again, God certainly intervened by putting her in my life because this is it's very difficult. Like
Yeah.
people are always saying, like, when are you going to get married, and why haven't you done this, and why haven't you done that? And it's like truthfully, my only answer is the financial aspect. Like,
hmm
I couldn't personally do that financially. Like, I could, over the next, month or so, I could make some money. Like, there's things that I could do to make money to buy a ring. Wouldn't be the ring that I want to. I like nice things. I just do. And I feel that she's extremely deserving of it. And
Yeah.
would I love to buy big like diamond ring? One
Of course.
thousand percent.
If
Like
you
I
could,
just
you'd do it right now. You hang up this
oh my
call.
yeah,
Right
yeah.
now.
And,
Yeah.
and I wouldn't and I wouldn't think twice about it. Like I would like
Mhm.
to do that. But it's like, sure, maybe I could buy like a nice diamond ring, but then, I'm not going to be engaged and like, still live with some family. Like
Mhm.
that's just weird. Like I'm not going to
So
do
then
that.
you're
So
committing to, you got to get an apartment or a house or
yeah, I mean, there's a lot to unpack and there's a
yeah.
lot involved in that. And it's very hard. It forces you to um, get really good at communicating,
hmm
but I mean, it's very difficult. And That's a big one. I would say, yeah, that's the big one. I mean, the other part is like kind of the emotional aspect, and I don't think this is a bad thing. It's all, how you look at it, because it really builds scar tissue, like
Hmm.
serious scar tissue. I have been kicked in the teeth like
Like you've
more
said before,
times.
you get a deal that's right on the table, and it's like, okay, this is going to be going through on Monday, and then you get a call Sunday night, and it's like, we need to push this out a year,
Yeah,
and then it's just
yeah,
like,
yeah,
gosh.
and yeah, and people are sort of enamored when you hear like a young kid saying like what he's doing, and it's kind of like what I'm doing. So they always are curious, especially family. They're always asking about it, right?
Hmm.
And when you say, no, I've got a deal that's, we're just went under LOI, or we're going under LOI, and then they ask you 3 weeks later and that deal went sideways for whatever
Yeah,
reason, like it gets so difficult to constantly say,
yeah.
well, because you kind of have to make up an excuse, and most people don't get it.
Hmm.
So I mean, the financial thing is definitely, I would say, a con. And as you know, right now, I had a really tough conversation with my girlfriend, and it was basically like, why don't I have sort of a side gig right now, like a
Hmm.
job? And my answer historically has been, well, because, which is a bad answer. I mean, I just really haven't put this much thought into it, but it's a bad answer because it's like, my answer was, there's so many hours that are involved that I need,
Hmm.
that if I go get a job, it's going to be a hindrance to these hours. And if the goal is to buy a company that can, I can finally be supported financially with, I need that goal to happen as fast as possible. If I get a job, it's only going to prolong
You
that and
feel like
make
it's,
money in the
yeah,
short term.
pulling your time away from it, right?
So yeah, it was this weird balancing act. But as I mean, you made a suggestion for a certain line of work that was a great suggestion, and I so I've now got some things that I'll be working on for the next just in the last couple of days, and I'll be making money on the side right now. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the side. It feels like you're going a lot slower, and when you see your buddies like Tristan and our other buddy, and you guys live in cool apartments, and there was an opportunity for me to move in with you and our other friend, and I couldn't make it happen, and that's like
Yeah.
very difficult. And I'd love to, for example, like after the swim, right? We were
Mhm.
talking about going to this one place, and like we all love food, we all love a good steak, and like internally I'm like, oh my gosh, like I can't, because this is coming up and I'm gonna have to pay for this, and there's limited funds there. So it is a emotional roller coaster that is very,
But
very difficult.
how sweet is it going to make the victory in the end, right?
Oh, but and that's the thing though, is like you have to be hyper focused on like what that kind of what that goal is. And then
Hmm.
I'll shut up after this point. But there's also another point to what, like being really focused on kind of that long-term goal. And that hard conversation I had with my girlfriend like this past week was, she literally said this to me, and it was confirmation that that's kind of the not kind of, that's the person I want to be with. And she goes, you're so focused on, I thought this was funny, you're so focused on the jet and the yacht and the big stuff down the road. But she was like, don't you want to take your mom to dinner? I have a single mom. Don't you
Hmm.
want to take your mom to dinner once a month, to a nice dinner?
Yeah.
And I was like, whoa. And she goes, don't you want to like take me to like a date, like have a date night like every week, nice
Hmm.
dinner, or every 2, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Don't you want to do that? And don't you want to? I also have a very rare opportunity right now, because I still live with some family. There's 10 years between me and my siblings.
Hmm.
My brother, it feels like my son. Like we're so close.
Yeah.
So I have a really nice opportunity to be able to like watch them grow up and to be this involved with them. And I
Hmm.
really, really cherish that. And she goes, don't you want to like be able to take your brother and your sister to a hockey game, a
Yeah.
basketball game? Like, don't you want that? And she
Hmm.
goes, you're going to be so focused on the jet and the $1 billion company, and when you're 40 years old, whatever. But everything in between that, like the small group of people that really matter to you, like what happens when you don't invest in that?
Mm.
And 10 years later, they're like, you know, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
when you don't do that, and
for sure.
it's not all about the, money and being able to spend money on them, but like the point is, it was a very clear point. It was a very good point. And I was like, wow. She goes, even if it's like $1,000 a month, just get something
Yeah.
so that you can kind of do these things. And,
Hmm.
so it was a good point though. But yeah, I mean, I think the cons to this, like it's hard for me to produce a big list, but I would just say, I'd say financially, because it would be really, really nice
Yeah.
to, be able to live in a nice apartment and kind of,
Hmm.
do that whole thing.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I totally get it.
so,
I've kind of gone through the same thing over the since I moved out here to Newport. It's like I focus so much on work, and I work during the day now. Obviously, we both train, and then I've told well about the other project that we're working on, my roommate
mhm,
and I, and so we just invest a lot of hours. And after our actual work days, we'll sit down and have meetings, or we'll sit down and try to get something done. And right now, we're kind of in a limbo state where we're not doing as much work, but there were times where we're putting in an extra 20 hours a week
mhm,
on that. And I've got friends and family that are like, hey, why don't you come watch a football game? Hey, why don't you, like, why do you never come back home and hang out with us?
mhm.
And it's like a sorry, I don't want to say sorry excuse, but it's like I just tell them, I'm working, I've got
Yeah,
work to do, you know.
yeah,
And I get where you're coming from. You definitely have to find time to invest and see that for what it is. You know what I mean?
mhm,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And even with that though, like you have to be aware of the consequences
Hmm.
involved in whatever, what goals you have. And
Yeah.
I think your goals and my goals, like in particular, are very, very similar.
Hmm.
And the fact is, there are consequences that come with that.
Yeah.
And where it really tortures people is when they don't come to terms with that,
Hmm.
and they kind of just push it off and put it in the closet and shut the door. And you really can't do that. Now, does it mean that every weekend I'm not doing any work,
Right.
you know, and that I'm going to be home, like let's say we're living together and I'm going to be home at 6 o'clock. We're going to have dinner at the same time every day. That's just not realistic. It's just
Hmm.
not. And like Anissa and I, like that's been clearly communicated, but that's not going to be my life forever.
Right.
Right. That's the point.
Hmm.
So, but I mean, it's just no secret. Like there are consequences involved with being super ambitious. There
Yeah,
just are. But some
for
people
sure.
handle it. I think there's a mature way of handling it. For
Mm.
example, a guy we talk about all the time, PVD, Patrick Bet David.
Yeah.
Here's a funny story. He is getting married, or I think he was just married, and they went to see this marriage counselor. And he sits down, and PVD takes control of the conversation, and he says, "So, like, why? Tell me about yourself. Like, why should we be here talking to you?" And he goes, "Well, I've been married for 35 years. And I
Hmm.
have a phenomenal marriage." He goes, "Wow, admirable. Like, that's seriously admirable." He goes, "What? I mean, what's the secret here? Like, so many marriages are not very good. Like, what is it?" And he goes, "You want to know what it is?" He goes, "Yeah, tell me." He goes, "Here it is. Every single night for 35 years, whatever it was, we have had dinner at 6 p.m." And Patrick stands up and he goes, "Thank you, babe. This is not for us." And he hands the guy $200, and he walks out and he sits down with her and he goes, "If you think that I'm gonna be a 9 to 5 guy," and
Yeah.
this is a guy who just made about $400 million selling his company,
PBD or the other guy?
PVD,
Okay.
PVD, and now he is. This was a long
Yeah.
time ago. And he
Mm.
says, "If you think that I'm going to be a 9 to 5 guy and that that's what you're walking into,
Hmm.
it's just not realistic.
Yeah.
It just isn't." And she's okay with that. And to my knowledge, they've got a phenomenal marriage. And he says, me growing up, my dad was like hardly around. He worked multiple jobs,
Hmm.
but on Sundays, he did nothing but give me 100% of his attention. And we did things to create memories together. And he goes, I literally swear to God, I've never thought, man, like, I never saw my dad much. Like,
Yeah.
I just wish he was around more because the time that he had was so intimate and like special
Hmm.
between them. And there was so much intention
Yeah.
involved in that time. So
Absolutely.
that's how you do it right, you know?
Yeah. For
And
sure.
so anyways, that's
Because there is like as much as there's not balance, there is like a small amount that you can, sacrifice
priorities.
and make
Yeah.
for that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, totally.
So that's, really long-winded answer, but like I think the best answer is you should know first, uh, fail but fail fast. Try
Hmm.
things, right? You were at the first company. You knew that wasn't for you after 3, 4 months,
Yeah.
and you went to Tesla. Great experience, but you knew that that wasn't the long-term play,
Hmm.
and that segued into where you are now. I would say that that is the perfect path for you.
Yeah.
You know, and but I can say that what I'm doing is like the perfect path for me.
For sure.
So like you will know, just like Tillman said, you will know
Yeah.
if you need it, and you only know if you go out and try. Like
Hmm.
you can't. It's going to be really hard to sit here and kind of read a book and come to the conclusion. You gotta really act,
Right.
and you'll come to
Yeah.
an answer. So
A lot of people are afraid to, take leaps,
yeah,
even if it's a short fall and they know they'll be fine. They're afraid to make the jump and try something.
yeah, yeah. So the other point there is, and I don't think this is sidetrack, but a quick comment is, Instacart, Instacart. So like you can order groceries and people
I saw the
deliver it to you.
IPO.
So they just IPO'd. The founder of it became a billionaire. What happened? I saw this guy post on LinkedIn. So this founder had over 20 startups. Every single one of them failed miserably, and Instacart was like the 21st.
Wow.
That it's just crazy. And I mean, the guy is like a billionaire overnight now because the IPO. So
Yeah.
um,
Like
that's
you
what I
said,
would say.
that guy broke through 20 walls and he
Yeah.
got to the 21st, which was probably harder than all the 20 put
Hmm.
together.
Yeah.
And he finally burst through it and I'm assuming got what he wanted or what he was
Yeah.
looking for. So
Yeah. Absolutely. So what would you say for you? You can kind of, I dove into my situation. What would you say? How would you dive into in terms of pros and cons of your situation?
I would say one of the biggest cons is probably comfortability. I like where I'm at now is a position where most people would get this job and they'd work it for 40 years and then retire and, live out the rest of their lives.
Hmm.
Um, I know I'm not that person and I don't want to work 9 to 5. I work 8 to 5, but regardless, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life.
Hmm.
You know, I want to work 24 hours a day for myself
Yeah.
and for
Yep.
what I want to do. And a lot of people think that, oh, being an entrepreneur, you work 3 hours a day. It's like, no, no, you work 24 hours a
Yeah.
day.
Yep.
And I understand that, and that's what I want. But I think going back to what I said, one of the cons is you can get extremely comfortable when you get paid enough money to, like you said, for um, the kid that you're mentoring, right? Like he can go get a job right after college and make 150K a year, or
Hmm.
like people you said in the Four Seasons in Miami,
Yeah.
250K a year.
Yeah.
Once you're paid that much money, a lot of people they lose their dreams. They're just like, well, what do I need to chase that for? I'm making a quarter million a year,
Hmm.
and so I think it's really easy to, in my position, let go of the dream and
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. So I have to take a lot of time, and I've been doing some reflection, like you had talked about. That's part of the reason why I ended up committing for the swim because we talked about that the
Hmm.
episode before I committed,
Right.
and I was just thinking like, okay, Spencer really questioned why am I not going? well, I don't really have a good answer, so why am I
Yeah.
not going?
Right.
You know,
Right.
once you actually sit down and talk to yourself, you know, silence the phone, turn the laptops off, turn the TV off, and just sit there and think a little bit. Um, it's very similar. I kind of have to do that with work and with my goals. You know what I mean? It's like I don't. It's hard. It's not hard because it's kind of just ingrained in me at this point. But I definitely do have to take the time to sit there and tell myself, okay, this is what I want. What I'm doing now is what I need to learn. It's not what I
Hmm.
want. It's what I need to learn in order to get to the point where I'm doing what I want. Um, and so yeah, just going back on that, it is semi difficult to not just get comfortable and accept, you know, oh well, I don't need to go try to start a company. What am I going to try to start a company for? I'm making good money now. I'll just do what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Maybe
Hmm.
try to promote a time or two and see how much more I can get paid that way. You know, again, carrot or the stick. Um, I'm trying to think. Obviously, I'm in a really good position where I'm learning very well from the CEO and the
Hmm.
VP of the company. I work directly under them too. So it's a huge position to be in. I got breakfast with him last week or the week before. No, 2 weeks ago. And he
The
straight up told me,
CEO.
yeah, we're starting to do breakfast once a month, so that's kind of cool.
Oh,
But
awesome.
um, he straight up told me, look, I'm an honest guy. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna, you know, feed you a bunch of BS. He goes, do I want to see you succeed? Absolutely. But does it matter to me if you don't? No. He's like,
Hmm.
you could fail and lose everything, and you know it's not going to affect my company or who I'm paying or whatever,
Hmm.
right? Um, and that was like pretty. It was really interesting to hear that, and you know him be so open about it. So I don't want to see.
What do you think? Why do you think he said that? And I'm sure you walked away and you were like thinking about that for a while.
Oh, I haven't stopped
Yeah.
thinking about it for two
Yeah.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
I personally think it's a. I feel like he's trying to send a message of like, don't get too comfortable. You
Hmm.
know, learn. You're here to learn. I brought you here to learn.
Yeah.
And when we first before when I was still with the other company, I first started talking to him about, you know, when he mentioned joining, like me possibly joining their company and whatnot. I had told him that I wanted to be a developer one day. So he understands that and he still
Hmm.
understands that. Like he's trusting me within his company to do good and to learn so that he knows I'm going to go do it on my own one day.
Hmm.
And so obviously he's been through it all. He started this company in the 90s. He's been through 2008. He's been through the dot-com bubble, whatever,
Hmm.
right? Like he's been doing this for 43 years. And so I think again his message he's trying to get across is it's on you to learn. It's not
Hmm.
on anybody else. Like I'm giving you, you know, the homework, or I guess the framework. Here's your framework. You've got to learn how to do it.
Right.
And you know, don't just be a floater. Get out there, learn, put all you got into it. Which is cool because it's not like he's out here just saying, "Oh, you know, be good for my company. I want to see my company do well."
Hmm.
He's like, "I want to see you do well." So I feel like that's where he's coming from. I don't know. Do you read that message differently?
No, I think that's probably pretty accurate. But the thing that just keeps coming to my mind is if you have, you know, if anybody has the opportunity to meet with someone like that, and we'll call that a mentor, but for you,
Mhm.
it's unique because he's the CEO of the company and he
Right.
brought you there. Is like the thing that keeps coming to my mind. It's like screaming at me is like when you sit down with him. I,
Mm-hmm.
so like when was the last time you said what's his name?
The
Call
CEO?
him John. Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
call him John.
I'm John.
Like have you said John like you hired me, you know where I'm at, um, and you kind of know what I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is it going to take for me, not just any employee at your company, but like, me, what's it going to take for me to be like hyper successful within your company
Mm-hmm.
over the next couple of years? Like, I mean, and I want detail, John. Like, what does it take? Because like I can learn all this stuff and great, and 3 years later I'm an encyclopedia for
Yeah.
real estate development. But like, how do I act on that within the company without hurting, hurting the company in any form?
Yeah.
Like I think that's a key question, and then I think that would probably lead to, if we're going to sit down here, John, like every month, I would like to be able to report to you every month and
Mm-hmm.
say, here's what I've done. So like if you have 3 questions or 5 questions or objectives for me
Yeah.
from now until 31 days later for till our next breakfast, like what are those? What can I physically do?
Mm-hmm.
And because then for you to walk away, most people just don't really know what to do
Yeah.
other than do their job.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you could walk away with something from him
Yeah.
and say like, here's what I got to get done in the next month,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to suck if I can sit down with him and say,
And say I
i
didn't do
didn't
it.
I didn't do these.
Yeah.
I mean, you got something to really focus on. Like I think that is just such a huge key to like success within a company.
For sure.
Another term I've never heard before, and again, PBD talks about this all the time, is like an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneur. Yeah. I
Have
had a
you heard
feeling.
that? So it's like kind
Mm-hmm.
of within a company.
Yeah.
Dude, be that dude.
You know
Like,
Andy Frisella owns
yeah,
Firstborn. Yeah, he talks
yeah,
about that a lot.
yeah. Be that guy. Like
Mm-hmm.
that's what you should. If you're going to work for a company, be that guy versus the employee number 76
Yeah.
or employee number
Mm-hmm.
43,720.
Yeah.
Be that person. But I think that if you can ask those questions and like come to terms with like 3 things, John, like, what can I do, between now and then?
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that would be huge.
Yeah.
I think that'd be
Absolutely.
huge.
Yeah.
And
I think another going back to the con side of things, um, going back to like getting paid a decent amount when you're 24, it's hard to not spend it. And I
yeah,
I certainly do not overextend myself. I'm not, I mean, I'm an honest person. I'm not going to lie. I have a couple times, not to the point where I'm like in crippling debt or anything,
hmm
but I'm like, okay, bought some stuff maybe I shouldn't have bought, or, I've
hmm
done, gone and, bought tickets to a football game or something like, okay, maybe I shouldn't have done that. Um, I have invested a lot of my money that I've made since college.
hmm
I don't know if you're the same, but I'm debt free. Thank God.
yeah, hmm
Um, and that makes a huge difference for me. But it is, it's hard not to just be like, oh, let's go get a steak dinner every week. You know what I mean?
hmm
I try my best not to fall into that, especially this area. This area, that's what everybody's about. They're like, oh, I got to post
yep,
a picture at Mastro's this weekend. I got to post a picture at,
hmm
this bar this weekend or this club this weekend. And it's like, people
right,
are going out Wednesday nights, Thursday nights, Tuesday nights, Friday nights. They go out every
hmm
single night down here.
yeah,
And I don't, for most people, it's probably hard not to get sucked into that. I don't really struggle with it because I mean, I've talked to my roommate about this. I was an idiot in college. Our first 2 years, freshman year, sophomore year, I did dumb stuff. Do I regret it? Yes and no. It's part
hmm
of life. You live and you learn, right?
hmm
Um, and I always tell our buddy, you two, when I met you, you guys completely flipped me around, you know,
hmm
and have totally helped me so much in the aspect of like, okay, I was still playing football and I was like, well, what am I going to do? I'm not going to go to the NFL. Why am I still playing football? It was almost the same thing
yeah,
like you said. I think I
yeah,
realized I don't need to be on this field anymore.
hmm
And okay, what am I going to focus on? So then I started focusing on school, getting my grades up because my grades were horrible. I had like a
hmm
2.9 after my first 2 years.
yeah,
And my goal was okay, cumulative, I need to graduate with over a 3.5
hmm
cumulative. And I got to 3.6, which was awesome. But
yep,
Yeah, definitely realizing your shortfallings and finding sometimes you got to swallow your pride because would I have loved to finish my last 2 years of football? Absolutely,
Hmm.
but was it necessary for where I wanted to go? I don't think so.
Yeah. Um, Being employed by a company that you are right now. So,
Mhm.
it's like 8 to 5 for you. A lot of people, it's 9 to 5. I truly don't know the answer. So, if you, let's say you get off at 5,
Hmm.
could you go home and have a ton of work from work to work on? Or is it like, well, I can't really do anything because, I need to be there at the office? Like, is that a thing?
Okay, so when I worked for Tesla, there was always work to be done. So like I have experienced that.
Hmm.
Now it's a little bit less of a workload, I would say, but it's a different
Hmm.
workload. I'm pretty efficient with my time now in the way this industry works to where I don't really worry about anything when I go home. There's like emails and stuff that I'll get after 5 p.m., you know what I mean? But it's an email. I can, hop on my laptop for 2 minutes and attach an attachment and send something, a document over to someone, you know what I mean? That stuff doesn't bother me. So little things like that, yeah. But I'm never like hopping back on my computer at, you know, 7, 8 o'clock at night and being on there for an hour for five minutes. But I get
Yeah.
what you're saying because at Tesla for sure. I mean, we would literally leave our laptops at work so that we wouldn't worry about it and do work at home
Yeah.
because there's always something to do.
Is it possible, like, with the company that you're at, like, could you create that work, or is it just like, well, I'm not at work, like, there's really not anything for me to do?
I No, I mean there is. I could find stuff to do at night. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
I'm just trying to think, like, for, the person that, yeah, I'm just trying to think, like, for the person that has a 9 to 5 and they just graduated or
Hmm.
they're about to graduate, this year and they're going to have a normal job.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that, as we've clearly stated. But, I'm just trying to think, like, what you could do to, like,
Here's my number
seriously
one rule.
separate yourself.
If you want to progress, the I think the cliche phrase is dress for the job you want, not the job you have.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when I worked for Tesla, I wore no suit or not really button ups or anything like that. But, I worked in a service department. Most people were wearing t shirts and jeans or t shirts and black pants and athletic shoes. I went and bought Cole Haan shoes that are like they look like dress shoes, but they feel like running shoes. I wore those every single day. I had a brown pair and a black pair, and I picked them up from Nordstrom Rack. By the way, if anyone needs like good business clothes, Nordstrom Rack is the way to go. They're
Agree.
used, like nice, good stuff, but you get them for way cheaper. Um, but yeah, so I would tuck my polo every day. So I'm wearing a tucked polo with slacks or like the Lululemon pants um, with those shoes. And so like my everyday was okay, dress better and act not like to a certain extent, obviously, right? You're not going to sit there and grill people and manage people like you're a manager if that's not your title, but you know just pick up responsibilities. Don't ask for responsibilities if it's something that you're comfortable doing. And guess what? If you mess it up, you mess it up. Then your manager will realize and say, okay, they tried. Like, yeah, they messed it up. So I can show them how to do it. And then they can just leave that for you to do in the future, right? And that's where a lot of people shortfall, especially. That's something I noticed at Tesla was like people want to work the job that they applied for and get promoted. And all they do is exactly what they're told to do. They don't do anything more. They don't reach out to do anything more. They don't try to do anything more. They just go in, do exactly what they're quote unquote supposed to do, and clock out at exactly 5 and leave that day. When I was at Tesla, I was working 12-hour shifts, and you're not supposed to do that. You know what I mean? And I was working
Right.
60, like I was clocking 60 hours a week on some weeks. That's 20 hours
Yeah.
over. which a lot of people would be like, well, why? Why are you doing that? And it's like, because I wanted to move my way up. I wanted to learn. I wanted to, challenge myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so my advice would be, if you're trying to work your way up, and for one, learn as much as you can. For two, find a way, the fastest way up the totem pole. It's literally to just put in the work.
Mm-hmm.
You've got to put extra hours in, and
Yeah.
it sucks to say, but that's just how it is. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like you have to show that you're not just another cog in the machine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And Jocko was talking about this like story, and he was saying how I think at one of their what was it, like one of the musters that they were doing, there's this guy who came up and he's been doing jiu-jitsu for a long time, and he's like, hey, I want to run a situation by you. And he goes, I'm getting a divorce, my business isn't doing very well, and to get a divorce I'm gonna have to pay her a certain amount of money. i
Mm-hmm.
don't I don't really have it or something like that, so I'm gonna have to sell the business. But if I sell the business, there goes my income. So like it
Yeah.
was this weird situation, and there was tons and tons and tons of negatives. And
Mm-hmm.
the guy was like, I just reached a point, like I'm at a point right now where I'm just like, I just feel kind of like dead inside.
Yeah.
And he was like, I might have to go get a job at Home Depot. And he was like, well, hold on, like, why are you talking about, getting a job at Home Depot like it's a bad thing? And he goes, well, I'm a business owner. I mean, I shouldn't be working at Home Depot. And he's like, he was like, basically, Jocko was saying, like, that's not a bad thing. If you go work at Home Depot, you better make sure that your aisle is the most squared away aisle
For
in
sure.
any Home Depot in the country.
Yeah.
And then and that's aisle one. And then when you take on aisle 1 and 2, you've got the two most squared away aisles in the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got aisle 1 through 5. And then 1 through 5 leads to, a division manager within a Home Depot.
Yeah.
And you freaking crush it.
Yeah. And
And
then you go
then,
to regional manager or whatever it is, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I just think that that's the standard. Like, it's hard for me. The only thing that I've had that is close to like a 9 to 5 job would be when I was working at this pizza restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
Hours were different, and it was right at the start of COVID. So like I got to do some entrepreneurial things, which
Mm-hmm.
was develop the entire delivery system to help
Yeah.
adjust to the fluctuation in sales because of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And like I got to do that, and like I took the lead on that. And the standard was, if you're like a delivery guy, you're not taking the orders.
Yeah.
And taking orders, like in this restaurant, we've got this big computer system, like it's kind of complex, but you just got to learn it. Well, like I went and learned it. So like I'm taking all these calls, I'm just hammering, and everybody's like, what the hell is he doing? And and it turns out like I got all these delivery guys. We went from like me being the only one to 6 of them. Every single one was taking orders. So like
Yeah.
it became this efficiency machine that
Mm-hmm.
was just awesome, and it was so fun.
Yeah.
But like
Lead by
that's kind of,
example, right?
yeah, and that's like an example. Like take control of the situation. Don't just be an employee. Like take control and really push the boundary, not in a bad way, but like take your responsibilities and max them out to like the their full potential, basically. So that's kind of what I would say. But
Yeah. Totally.
yeah, uh, maybe we can wrap it up with this. I mean, what would you say? How do you look for a good company to work for, and how do you make that decision? You brought up a very interesting point, and I'll just say this one comment. And again, I
Mm-hmm.
got this from a guy, Tillman Fertitta, and he was like, I'll get people to come and interview with me, and he's looking at it and he goes, you really haven't succeeded much, like straight up, you just haven't really done much. And
Mm-hmm.
they're like, yeah, well, I know. And he goes, like, there's certain people, I know a lot of companies. I'm talking as him. I know a lot of companies. I know a lot about a lot of companies. And he can look at a resume and say, you just haven't been with the right company. Like,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know how to develop leaders.
Yeah.
It's too volatile. Like, he goes, one of the biggest things is, look at a company and look at their liquidity. If
Mm-hmm.
you're working for a big, a public company, or a company that's owned by a public company, you can look that up. What's the stability of the company? You talked
Yeah.
about that. Tesla's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
That's probably, if you wanted to take the path of being with the company for a long time, that's a
Hmm.
great company to be with. It's not going anywhere.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Google, Tesla,
Yep.
Apple, a
Home
lot.
Depot.
Home Depot. Yeah,
Yeah.
Home Depot's huge. I told you about my grandma's fortune on Home Depot, right?
No. Mm-mm.
My grandma from my mom's side, she's the one from Finland. She came to America during World War II when the Germans started invading up there. They kicked her on a boat and sent her to the US. She put $20,000 into Home Depot, like almost everything she had at the time, into Home Depot stock in the 80s or the 90s or something like that. And I mean, I'm not going to sit here and talk about what the value is, but it's insane. Because at the time, she was like she didn't know too much about stocks, and my
Mm-hmm.
grandpa had just passed away, and she was like, I don't know what to do. They had the house. She was able to pay for the house because she was a real estate agent, but she was like, I need to invest some of this money that we have, but I don't know what to do with it. I don't I don't really understand stocks, but I do understand that the country's only getting bigger, the population is growing, and everyone needs a house, whether they build a house or it's home improvement. And so she was like, I'm just going to put all this into Home Depot stock.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely crushed it.
Yeah.
But um, yeah, I mean, there's so many good companies out there, and part of finding the right company is part of finding what you feel like your purpose is. You know what I mean? Like a lot of people, if you go talk to them, why do you work at Tesla? It's because they care so much about climate change and sustainability and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
and it just aligns with them. Um, you could say the same thing about multiple other companies. If
Mm-hmm.
you really care about tech and communication and whatnot, you can go work for Apple. And I don't I don't know exactly how, I'm sure like to a certain extent liquidity and how strong financially the company is definitely plays a role, because if it's not doing well, it's an internal problem, right? Um, but I'd say over that, going back to a conversation we've had before on the pod, is purpose. Like you got to find what you want to do and what you feel like aligns with you and aim towards that.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. I think I think another always a great route to go,
Hmm.
and a lot of people I think would maybe advise against this. To be honest, I know that one of our friends, like I was really pushing for this with him, and other people were not. Is like sales, a sales job.
Yeah.
Um, Number
Just going
one,
skills in general, right?
oh my goodness,
Yeah.
yes. And number one, it is a high pressure job. If you
Hmm.
don't produce, depending on where you are, it's like
It's
real
probably
estate.
the closest thing you can get to entrepreneurship,
Oh yeah,
especially if you're like commission based.
oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they always say salespeople are the highest paid people on the planet
Yeah.
because most of the time there's no cap. Some
Hmm.
companies do. I've never understood that, but
Yeah.
it's not the point. I think that's a great way to go. Um, and jobs that are not super glamorous, like car sales, like things
Yeah.
like that. I mean, you know, real sales jobs.
Mm.
Another big one is solar
Oh,
sales.
yeah, yeah.
You are literally knocking door to
Door
door.
to door.
If
Yeah.
you're in a good geographic environment like Florida, places
Hmm.
in California, Texas.
I had a buddy that I grew up with, and he was doing um, like pest control spray. Like
Mm-hmm.
you spray around a house.
Yep.
He joined a company down in Texas, and he would only do it during the summer. But he was walking away with $30,000 a month. A month. So he'd
Yeah.
go make 90K during his summer, and he'd spend it all during his college year, and then he'd go back out in the summer and make
But was
90K.
it
And
but was it sales or was he just
yeah,
like
it was door
spraying?
to door to door knocking
Oh,
sales.
so he's selling the
He's
spray,
selling like the service of
the
them spraying it.
service.
And I believe whoever he signed up, he got like another commission if they signed up if they did spray say 4 times a year, right? Every time that same household that he sold would renew, let's say their quarterly spray, he
Yep.
would get paid on that quarter.
Wow.
each quarter, and it was a much smaller amount than the initial
Sure.
spray amount, but it's,
No, I mean
dude,
that stuff, but that stuff's real. Like that's
yeah.
very possible.
Mhm.
And yeah, I mean anything you do in life, an employee, whatever you do, like even in a personal relationship, it's all sales. You
Everything
know,
is, yeah. I
you
mean,
know,
you're selling people to get rid of to sell their company, right?
right? Like it's all sales.
Yeah.
Um, but you hear success stories like that. It's not a glamorous thing. It just
Mhm.
isn't. It can be, and it can turn into that. But also look at compensation structure. Like if you're going to go into a sales job, I mean, you want something that there's a lot of room for opportunity. Like again, solar sales. I know that's huge. A
Yeah.
friend of mine knew this other kid who was making like, I think he was like 20 grand a week, like something freaking insane doing solar
Wow.
cells over in like Orange County.
That's crazy.
Um, so, anyways, there's a lot of opportunity out there, and there's pros and cons to everything. I think probably
Hmm.
the best point is just act, and you got to just jump into something,
Yep.
and don't be afraid to walk away. You know,
Yeah.
people all about commitment, obviously,
Like
and
you said it
loyalty.
real fast, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, all about commitment and loyalty. But like, if you know something's not for you,
Hmm.
that's when I would be, in most cases, I'd be a little more selfish towards, this
Yeah.
isn't for me. I gotta make a change.
Hmm.
No
Another
shame in
thing
that.
I'll say to people, a lot of people are really, they're really scared and I guess worried about, and we can end on this, I think, but um, they're afraid to have a resume that's got, I worked a year here, I worked 2 years here, I worked
Hmm.
4 years here. Because back in the day, everything's been, 10, 15, 20, 30 years
Right.
plus with a company. One of my mentors, John, the one I told you, owns the big beverage distribution
Yeah.
company. Um, when I got my new job, he took me out to dinner just as like a congratulations. And he pretty much said, he's in his 60s or 70s. He's like, for us, he's like, it's normal to go get a job, work for 20, 25 years, be loyal, maybe move to a different company for 10, 15, and then retire, right?
Hmm.
But he said nowadays, for your generation and for people like you absolutely have to jump around. And this is a guy that owns I mean, it's probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars, right? The value of his company. He's even admitting, like, as a large scale employer, that
Hmm.
he understands it's no longer that way. He goes, the most I typically see people in a job, which is fine, is 1 to 5 years. And, you have to take advantage of opportunities.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolutely. No, I would not disagree at all. Got it. Okay. I think that was a good one.
Episode 10.
Yep. Getting closer. Yep.
Shaking, not or keep it shaking.
Not stirred.
All right, everyone.
Okay.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.